Today I'm going to show you how we built this 10 drawer dresser for a customer, or as I call them, Chester drawers. We will have a set of plans available on our website for this project so you can build it yourself, or you can just order a chest of drawers like this and we will ship it to you anywhere in the United States. Howdy, this is Robert, owner of Dailey Woodworks in Bryan, Texas, and we have already dove into this project starting out with our face frame material. I do all of my face frames out of solid wood. In this case we used beech. It's really hard, it stains well, it paints well. It's a good all-purpose wood that is a fair price. For my face frames, I always do pocket hole construction because it's quick, it's easy, it's strong, and it just works for face frames. There's no reason to try to do anything else really unless you have to for some reason, and sometimes that is the case. If you buy all the plans, all the dimensions and layouts and everything will be set out for you. And in this case, the finished dimensions of this project were 54 inches long, 20 inches deep, and 36 inches tall. If I had to make it again, I would actually make it about 22 inches deep because then I'd be able to fit an 18-inch drawer slide in there and you would be able to have just more room, and I think it would have been better in the long run. But we build custom furniture to our customers' specs, and this was the size that they needed for this particular space that this was going. You can see I'm using some spacer blocks to make sure I get everything laid out correctly. I always do that with either scrap wood, or in this case, because we're having a center divider to divide that drawer bank in half, I was using those to make sure I'm getting all my spacing correct, and then I go back and measure and mark the center line and attach all those into place. You want your stiles, the vertical members on the outside, running fully from top to bottom, and then your rails going across the full length, and then your center stiles are whatever length they need to be. And here you can see I cut just 2 spacers to make sure that I'm getting those drawer spaces perfect, and that makes drawer building easy because then with my good undermount slides I can just build 4 drawers exactly the same size, and then it doesn't really matter where they go until we attach our drawer faces, and we did our drawer faces to try to get a continuous grain. Because this is kind of a modern contemporary style, I actually did a double face frame. I tried a few different ways in my mind to make it work, and this just worked the best. Build the face frame, build the second frame, and then just glue and nail it in place. Now, the sides of this project, I decided instead of using 3/4 inch, I was going to use 1/2 inch plywood. From everything I've seen from my shop furniture, in fact, that workbench, the entire workbench base is built from 1/2 inch plywood, and it has been flawless. It saves weight. The plywood is slightly less expensive, about $30 a sheet actually. I mean, it's still really good multi-layer domestic makeable plywood without voids. But what I'm doing is I'm basically creating a rabbet. I'm doing a 3/4 inch rabbet on one side for the face frame, that first face frame, and then on the back I do a 1/2 inch deep rabbet so that I can do my 1/2 inch back. So any plywood on this project actually turned out to be 1/2 inch. And then here I'm just gluing and stapling it into place, and because I was painting it, that was okay because I was able to fill those nail holes and then paint over them so they're completely invisible. If I was going to stain it, I probably would have done it a different way, but I'm not sure exactly how I would have done that. My motivation for using 1/2 inch plywood on this and a previous project that I don't have footage for anymore because my external hard drive died. That was a frustrating day when I went to edit that video and got the click, click, click of death. But I built it out of 1/2 inch plywood as well, and so by doing it this way, I essentially only buy 1/2 inch plywood, and then I'm pretty much able to utilize every piece of scrap for drawer bottoms, drawer sides, all these different things, and in the end it will save me money because you know, I am a business, and my point is to provide really good furniture at a really good value, as much value as possible. And by standardizing the materials I use, I'm able to do that. Now, these mounting cleats or structural members were 3/4 inch plywood, so you know you have to, you know, one size does not fit all, but if you can standardize as much as possible, that's good. And it's just to keep things from racking, square everything up, and give me something to mount to. Now, my pocket screws did go through the back of this, but I just used my angle grinder to grind that off the back and then sanded it down. You'll see that in a second. Now we're sanding everything. Try to sand as I go, it just makes life easier. And then I added a chamfer. I like just a simple chamfer on my work. Pretty much whatever you like is fine. I like a chamfer just because it's simple, it's clean, and it's unintrusive, and it just kind of fits with whatever you're doing. And here I'm attaching that secondary face frame, and that's kind of hiding the little lip that the rabbited sides created. And then because we're doing a painted finish, I'm able to just to glue and nail that on and then fill those nail holes with some wood putty and not have an issue. I like using the Elmer's stainable wood filler, and I have found that that stains the best out of anything I have used. And for things like beech and oak, it's practically invisible once you stain it. So that is a really good wood filler. And here we are painting the body. Let me know if you want like a full tutorial on spraying finishes. I use an HVLP system, which is pretty expensive and might be out of most hobbyist price range. But if you want a tutorial over it, I'll do it, but I don't find it interesting because I hate painting. But here I am spraying my either second or third coat. I did a 3 coats finish on this. And I'll sand between each coat, and then it gives me a really nice finish. The top was made out of 13/16 beech hardwood. Again, this is kind of my go-to wood. It's hard, it's durable, it's inexpensive, and again, trying to find that value point of it paints really well and it stains well. So by having something that paints and stains well, I can stock one material and use more scraps when necessary. But of course, you know, we use pecan, walnut, mesquite, whatever, you know, the customer wants, ultimately. We do have a whole video on making tabletops with the domino joiner. I'll link that below if I can remember to do that. And then I also have a video over this wall-mounted panel clamp, because I can't think of a better name for it. It's pipe clamps on, I think, 1-inch EMT conduit at an angle, which makes it where I can clamp up pretty much anything out of the way and then keep working. Then once it comes out of the clamps, we sand it down. My sanding process, and I do have a video over my sanding process, is 80 grit to get all the glue squeeze off and flatten it, any ridges that are there. Then I cut it to size. Then I sand it with 120 with my Festool Rotex, and then I sand it with 120 again with my Mercaderos to get that finer finish. And I do not sand above 120 grit. I have experimented with all of it, and 120 is sufficient for painted furniture. It is good for stained furniture, and I don't have any problem with it. And here's an example of the finished product, all sanded with 120 grit. Now once I do, you know, my first coat of lacquer or paint, then I move up to the 220, 320 to get that really fine finish. The drawer faces I cut and marked as I went because I wanted a continuous grain. So I marked the front, back, everything. Get yourself some good pencils, mark everything. It sands off, and getting parts mislabeled is always bad. Here I'm marking the center because I have, even though these are slab drawer faces, there's a lot of routing that goes into them. Using Starbond adhesive. I do have an affiliate link for them somewhere, but basically you put down some painter's tape, you glue the painter's tape to the painter's tape for your template, and then it peels off without damaging your wood surface. So this is router setup 1, which is just a template guide to kind of route that little dip in the front. And then we're repeating that over and over again 10 times. And then I do a little sand because there was just a little bit of snipe from where the router bit was hitting. Here is a router setup 2, and that is a cove, and the cove I have to kind of do in multiple passes and then raise it up each time so we're not breaking out the plywood. Router setup 3 was a chamfer on the face, following with that bearing just to ease those edges. And then router setup 4 was a large chamfer on the bottom of the face. That way when you reach in on the drawer front and open it, it is nice on your hand, because we're doing a no hardware finish. You can see how that chamfer worked and that cove worked on that picture. Staining we use, what did we use? We used Minwax Dark Walnut Stain, and there's nothing magical about applying stain. Is I use a disposable rag, wipe it on, wipe it off. And now we're moving on to drawer boxes. I've got tons of videos over drawer boxes. Currently I'm using all 1/2-inch plywood, and part of the reason is I'm able to utilize all of my scrap from earlier, all the rips and things like that. I'm able to utilize that, and then I edge band it, and I use fast edge banding. I think I have a video over that as well. I'll link to that one to kind of show you in detail how to use it, but it's good for people who don't do a ton of edge banding. These drawers are the most I've used in a while, and in a small space, it's quick and easy. It all fits in one drawer when I'm done. Once I have everything edge banded, I go and run my 1/2-inch wide, 1/4-inch deep dado, or groove. This is technically a groove because the dado runs across the grain, and then I cut all my parts to size. I try to do as long as possible to start, and that way when I run my dado and my edge banding, I can do that in one pass. What I've found is essentially an 8-foot stick of whatever width you need it to be makes about one average drawer. These are pretty small, so that wasn't quite true, but on average it kind of works out. And so I'm doing a rabbet on the sides so that the fronts kind of nest into that, gives me a glue surface, and then I staple through the front and the back so I don't have any exposed fasteners when I'm done. And then I rip off the back side of my plywood so that I can just slide the bottom in when I'm done, and then staple that into place. You don't lose any strength with that, and there's no reason to have it there. Don't make it more complicated than you need it to be. And so here I am cutting my bottom to size and utilizing all my scrap so that when I was done I didn't have a lot of unusable material that I had to throw away. I try to undersize it by about a 32nd to a 16th so that it slides in but it's still pretty snug. With using all plywood, expansion and contraction isn't a concern, so you can just make it fairly tight, just you don't want to make it so tight you bust your joinery. Installing undermount drawer slides is pretty simple. I'm using the CSG value line from cabinetparts.com. They are in stock a lot and they're pretty good, and they include everything you need so you don't have to buy your locks and stuff separately, and I have not had a problem with them. I've installed a few dozen. Now this is where I kind of realized, hey, I should have talked to the customer into go ahead and bumping that to 22 inches, because my drawer slide depth was about 17 inches, so I had to use 15-inch drawer slides, but those little cleats weren't quite long enough, so then I had to add a little half-inch spacer. The horizontal rails going across the back, what I like to do is put those in, and then I'm able to just rest the rear bracket on that. But here I had to add a half-inch spacer for it to get a good bite. So a little, that didn't turn out as planned, but you just have to kind of fix your mistakes and move on. And here you can see where I added that blocking. You never see it once all the drawers are installed, and you know, it's just part of cabinet making, is solving problems as you go sometimes. But you do want them square. Here's a little jig I made to install the pins, or the drill out the pins.
I posted on a Facebook group for small cabinet makers on a simple way to drill out the pins for undermount drawer slides. If you work with undermount drawer slides, you know that this pin has to get drilled in so it holds the back of the drawer. Now you can do the slam, dent, and drill method, but then your drill bit might go through. So I asked what was a magical solution to this, and what people showed me was this little jig right here. 1/2-inch plywood scrap. It nests in right here, and then on my drill press I drilled out a stop block because I didn't have a stop collar. Perfect hole for your pin for your undermount drawer slides every single time. Works perfectly. I used a 5/16 bit.
So before I go ahead and do all of my drawers, I'm going to attach my top. This had a 1-inch overhang on the left, right, and front, and then it was flush with the back. And that's just held down with some screws into those mounting cleats, and that gives it just enough little give so it can expand and contract. And now we attach our drawer faces. So I'm using 1/2-inch overlaid drawer faces, and so it's 3/4 inches on each side, and then my drawer is an inch smaller than the opening, and so I do an inch from the bottom and then 3/4 inch from each side, and that gets me a perfect layout for my drawers. And you can see the little notches that I did and our drawer boxes, and all turned out really nice. The customer is extremely happy. I'm proud of how this turned out. So be sure to go to daileywoodworks.com if you want to order this, or get the plans and build it yourself. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.